I'm gonna do a hard pivot to orgasms.
Real talk, my goal is to ask you some questions you've never been asked before. I want to take a stroll through your mind. Ready to get vulnerable? She's the actor who turned every can't into watch me. From challenging beauty standards to tackling taboo topics on screen, she's made fearlessness her signature. Prepare to meet the force who's rewriting Bollywood's rules. This is Bhumi Pednekar.
This is gonna sound creepy. I'm gonna sound like a stalker. I'm fully okay with that. I feel like I know you intimately. It's the first time we're meeting in person, actually.
Yeah, but that's the first thing I told you as I walked in. I was like, why am I this comfortable? Why am I this familiar with you? Because I just felt like hugging you just felt like there's somebody I know.
Yeah, and also I'm gonna even go a step further and say, based on the few interactions, I actually reread all of our DMs in anticipation of this. And I feel like I know certain things about you just based on your DMs.
Yeah.
For example, I feel like you are driven to a point that's like kind of crazy. Is that true? Am I nailing that?
Absolutely.
It's also because you shot for a full day and you came here after your shoot, so I know that because that's the type of crazy stuff I do.
Yeah.
So I think we have this crazy like driven energy that we're gonna relate on together.
Yeah.
I think we're crazy in the same way.
And I guess that's what's kind of familiar, right? Because I have seen your journey. It's been so incredible, Lilly. It is just so inspiring. And honestly, just as, you know, your Indian friend all the way in Mumbai, when I see you and with everything that you've achieved, and it's just not professionally, but with everything that you're trying to do otherwise as well, it's very commendable because that's something I'm trying to do. You know, just create impact with your work.
Yeah.
And I feel that's where we kind of like, you're like, okay, you know, she'll get me.
Yes,
she gets me.
100%. Yes. Hashtag relatable. Wait, so talk to me about your family. You have a sister.
Yes.
Older, younger?
Younger.
Younger sister. When you were born, mom, dad, whole family?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What was the family dynamic like? Were your parents strict?
Our breakfast conversation was always about what are you going to grow up and become? What are you going to be? It was, thank God, because I value it a lot more now once I kind of grew up. It was never about, oh, what's your perfect partner going to be like? Actually, a man was not really given any bhav. I'm going to also break into Hindi here and there. Yeah. It was not really like, we were never ever told that, okay, it's few more years in this house and then you're going to get married. And thank God for that. So I grew up in a fairly liberal household. My parents never discouraged either my sister or I from doing our extracurricular activities, you know. So we were never scolded for putting that red lipstick on when I was 13. And thank God for that.
So I also come from a family of two sisters.
Yes.
And so I want to ask you, your parents seem to have loved that. But was there anyone in the extended family or the community, or actually maybe even subconsciously in your parents' mind that was like, oh, we don't have a son. There's a family full of two girls, we don't have a son.
Not my parents, but I know the extended family had like this, there was this energy, but I think it never kind of reached my parents. The disparity that our gender faces, I never felt while I was in my safe bubble at home. I felt a lot of that once I kind of stepped out into the big bad world where I was like, oh my God, like they didn't prepare me for this.
Why do you think your parents are like that? What is it about them that made them so happy with two daughters, made them feel like they were champions?
So my mom has also grown up in a fairly liberal household because they were two sisters and four brothers. But even though my nani wasn't educated, but I feel like she was so knowledgeable. She was so evolved, you know. So my mom's side of the family, it's actually a bit of she was a matriarch in every way possible. I mean, when I would look at my grandparents, I saw like the greatest love story ever.
Yeah.
And I feel like that kind of came to their kids as well. And with my father...
That's actually in this question, the question behind the question is really, I love hearing about your mom, but it's the father that always is interesting to me because that's honestly not always the case.
With my father, I think the basic thing, like the least I would expect out of a man is just how open-minded he was. You know, like when I got my period, my father was the one who actually got me my first sanitary napkin. And after I became an actor and I kind of had the opportunity to spread out to actual work, and because my films also kind of always have a social message, is when I realized that I have grown up with so many privileges.
Yeah.
The fact that they worked their entire life to make sure that I got education that that they thought I should get. Just creating an atmosphere at home which is so safe and loved, and just firing our ambition, which doesn't happen.
I don't even think I would be able to tell my dad to go buy me any menstruation products. So that is wild to me. Even as a full adult, I find myself like hiding. I always have to talk to myself about this. I'm like, stop doing this, but that's like a thing. So that blows my mind to hear.
Yeah, because he did this, it was my first period, right? My mom wasn't home. My mom was, she was a working adult, and he was home, and he celebrated my first period. And today I can actually eventually my team members would come in, and Uppi has been with me since my second film. So we've been together for 9 years. He's like my man Friday, my right hand, like family. Like I can actually tell him, okay, get me a tampon super, get me a tampon regular, and it's done. So, so that comfort that I felt when I was young. So for me, like speaking about my period or letting like people on set know that I'm on my period and I'm not feeling well, or, I am in extreme pain and I can voice it. I think that comes from the fact that I could do that when I was younger.
When's the first time you remember you were told you couldn't do something because you were a girl?
It was actually once I became an actor.
Do you remember what it was?
So it wasn't in those many words that you can't do this, but there is this underlying current of things where you're kind of reminded of your gender, especially post-COVID, because post-COVID, I feel like budget cuts only happen to a certain gender. And it just feels like cutting that bit of my remuneration is really going to help the film. But then I'm like, am I really the problem here? I don't think so.
This is such an evolved way of thinking, because I've been in the exact same scenario where I feel like often women are made to feel like, but if you make this sacrifice, it's for the greater good of this project and you should be so grateful to be here. And I've been caught in that trap so many times.
Yeah, I get caught in it all the time.
And I won't lie, sometimes I still get caught in it a little bit where I'm like, I wanted a seat at the table so badly. I wanted to be part of this project so badly. And I feel ashamed of myself because I'm like, you do these interviews and you make these posts being like, no, stick up for what you believe in, stand up for women, stand up for pay. But I myself constantly find myself being like, okay, I'll bend this way, I'll bend that way. I want to see at the table. And then I like beat myself up about it. So it's so refreshing to hear someone else have this internal debate all day long.
Yeah.
I assume then when you grew up, did you watch a lot of Hindi cinema?
A lot.
Okay, so what were some of your favorite films and how do you think they impacted you? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this question. It's because I love Hindi cinema. But I have a little bit of a bittersweet relationship with some of the earlier films.
Absolutely.
So talk to me about that. Like, what were those films and how did they impact you?
So like Rang De Basanti. I love Rang De Basanti. I love Legend of Bhagat Singh.
I love it, love it.
So in my early years, when I kind of decided the movies I want to watch, they were really about like the freedom struggle or how...
This is so on brand. So on brand.
And I can still watch those films. I still like weep every time I watch Legend of Bhagat Singh because I feel like, it's... I have that fire in me, or if I watch Rang De Basanti, it's one of my most favorite films. But then there was a side to me where I loved Dil To Pagal Hai. I loved Kuch Kuch Hota Hai because I love dressing up and, just the idea of romance. And, I would have like these hour-long conversations with myself in the mirror.
One of my favorite films was also Kuch Kuch Hota Hai. And I feel safe saying this because I've also spoken to Karan Johar, and we had a really honest conversation about this. But as someone who grew up as a full tomboy, fully wore the baggy clothes, loose. I was the Anjali before.
Yes,
I was
we
that
all
Anjali.
have been there, Lilly.
Exactly. But I think subconsciously what that film also taught me was like, that can only be a phase, and then you have to grow up and you have to become the pretty girl and you have to be acceptable, and then you have to... And I think that kind of messed with me for a while. So some of those films that I watched and I still love and adore them, and it was a different time and place and context, I think like I had to unlearn some of that kind of stuff. Do you feel like any of those films shaped you into the woman you are in terms of like made you understand yourself as a woman?
Oh, absolutely. I loved Urmila Matondkar in every way possible. She owned it. So I've followed her filmography. The way she danced, she owned her sexuality. She was always so strong. You've never really seen her play the damsel in distress. So Rangila is a film that I still watch it and I'm like, okay, this film's not as dented as many of the other films, but I think I was quite young that I didn't feel that pressure. I just identified with Anjali. And I was like, okay, there'll be a Rahul and life is going to be okay. Right? It's only later that I realized that the standards created were so unachievable.
So you brought this up, but you do tend to pick roles that have some sort of social message, that have some sort of impact. Your films really say something.
Yeah.
What is the thought process that goes into, I'm assuming that's a very intentional choice, but what is the thought process and filter you use when you're deciding, am I going to do this film?
My first film wasn't because I wanted to kind of be a part of a film that had more to do than just entertain people, because I was like, oh my God, I'm getting a film.
And the first film was?
Dum Laga Ke Harsha.
Yep.
I mean, I feel like the universe was somewhere guiding me in a way that I started with a film like Dum Laga Ke Harsha, and just the person that I am, I do want to bring about a change. I want to leave behind positive impact. That was the case even before I was an actor. I've always used my platform, however small, to create positive conversation. Always. And then Dum Laga Ke Harsha happened. And after that, every film that I chose was a conscious decision. Because I feel cinema is a very, very powerful medium. Yes, we are meant to entertain, but along with that, especially in the times that we are living, everything is so polarized. Right? Like, you've been in India the past few days, the conversation has only been about sexual assault. And then when we portray characters on screen that fuel the current narrative and not try and change it, there's a problem, and we all are part of that problem, and that's something that I was very clear I'm not going to do. I have made mistakes. I wouldn't say, but with every experience, not just every film, every life experience, I think my perspective on many things have changed. And I have a lot of clarity that I really want to see a world that doesn't discriminate this much, right? Because every time I'm in my car and I see little kids on the road, I'm driven with guilt. And I'm fortunate that I have a platform and I have money today. So I'm like giving back as much as I can, right? But I realize that that's not the solution. The solution, what you're trying to do with your fund, is exactly that.
Thank you.
Right? It's not about the wealth that you have, it's about the impact that you create. Because you have to, even if it's 4 people, eventually when those 4 girls are empowered, they will empower 4 more. And that cycle doesn't end, that cycle doesn't stop.
I'm going to do a hard pivot to orgasms. Just going to hit orgasms. Let's just dive right into orgasms, shall we? Because we connected a lot on DMs because we both had the experience recently of doing a sex comedy.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about thank you for coming.
I think you should start with your experience. How was yours?
Well, my experience was actually after your experience. So we're going to start with your experience. And also, my experience did not debut in India. So I feel like it's very different. But you were part of quite a rare movie. I feel like I can't think of another one. A sex comedy from the female perspective about female pleasure. Now, if you told me as a child I would see that movie in Hindi cinema, I'd be like, LOL.
Yeah.
But you did it. Were you nervous? Were you excited? What was the thought process going into that?
I was quite excited and a little delusional as well.
Delusional?
I love thank you for coming.
So do I.
So it started with me being very excited because I got to work with women that I love. And I'd not really experienced a set with that much female energy, and it's just like the best. And then the film got a lot of love at TIFF. The film released in India. And it didn't. I would say the reaction surprised me. There were enough girls that championed the film. I remember you and I spoke about it. But then there was this section that kind of suddenly felt like I am, that it's a bit of a disgrace to our culture, just because you don't get an orgasm, that doesn't mean that that's not feminism, just because you want to kind of reclaim your sexual power and your desire, that's not the only definition. And I was like, oh my God, okay. I was like, this journey is very complicated. It's very long. What we did gave me a lot of perspective of where we as a society stand. And I think I'd kind of created a bubble around myself where I was like, it's changing and it's happening. But then I realized that's only my ecosystem. But does that mean that demotivated me? Not at all. I have been forcing Ria, let's do a thank you for coming part 2. Because there was a large audience that found a presentation in the film. The film has this beautiful line, खुशबंदी इतनी खतरनाक क्यों लगती है आप सबको? Why is a girl that's so happy, why do you fear her so much? And that line has just stayed with me because I was like, that's the reality of it, right? It was a very pleasurable experience. My film on female sexuality and all. And the big O.
Yes, I love it. I really loved the film.
What was yours like?
Well, I'm not gonna lie, I was excited. I also co-wrote the film, so I was excited. I was nervous. Of course, there's some really intimate scenes, and it's like, it's a room full of people, and you're really vulnerable during those scenes. And so it was an exercise in learning how to let go. But of course, there was a fear of, and I think I DM'd you saying this, at 35 years old, I called my mom to be like, am I allowed to do this movie? I literally was like, am I allowed to do this movie or will you disown me? My dad still hasn't seen it. He will when it releases shortly. But am I scared about that? Absolutely. I'm absolutely scared. I am also scared about what people will say to him, what they might say to my parents, which leads me to my question for you of, if you had all the power in the world right now, if there was no laws to follow, there was no culture holding anyone back, what are the films you wish existed in Hindi cinema right now? What are the characters, the female characters and the female stories that you're like, I wish this could exist to this extent?
I want to throw that question to you.
For Hindi cinema specifically?
Yeah.
So thus far, a film I saw, actually I will say 2 of them. I will say Thank You for Coming is up there for me, and Rocky Aur Rani Ki Prem Kahaani is up there for me. In terms of female characters where I was like, dude. I think I would like for them to not be the exception. I think all films right now that have a majority female cast are the exception. And I think for me, it's less about the story on screen for Hindi cinema, but it's more about the frequency of the stories.
Oh, absolutely.
Meaning, what I talk about a lot in my charity is we're really interested in figuring out what kind of storytelling is best to change certain behaviors, right? And we always say that it's like medicine. One dose of it doesn't really usually cure you. You need to keep reinforcing these ideas over and over again.
But see, that's the thing, right? We need an audience that celebrates that. Look, what happens with actors, female actors today is that if you have one solo film that might not work, you're not given those many opportunities. Right? Because most times when a girl does a film that she's leading, she is trying to challenge the status quo. She is raising questions. She is going to make you uncomfortable because this is that one chance that she has to kind of liberate herself and let you know that, dude, this is the shit that you're putting me through. And if that chance fails, because by the end of it, it's a business, she is not going to be given another chance.
Absolutely correct.
And it is frustrating.
I know you're a national advocate for the SDGs. Unicorn Island Fund focuses on Goal 5, gender equality. So I wanted to ask you, what do you think the biggest obstacle is to achieving Goal 5, gender equality, specifically in India? And I ask this genuinely because although I'm of Indian descent, I do not live in India. This is what I do. I make people think.
Oh my God. The answer is not going to be simple. It's going to be a little detailed. Our conditioning has always been that the power lies with the other gender. The moment you try and reclaim it, because there's no other way that they can grab it back from you, they use physicality. Right? But the brutality and the violence that is associated with sexual violence now is just like, it sends you, I'm scared and I'm angry. And I'm like, this just doesn't stop. Right? Women are burnt big for dowry. Many a times they're tortured and they're pushed to a level where they kill themselves. There's marital rape. We're not safe on the road. I'm not safe at the doctor's. I'm not safe with my teacher. I'm not even safe like on a sports ground. So it just doesn't stop. And it really upsets me that it's just become like regular news headlines, right? And now it doesn't affect us as much.
It's like normalized, getting normalized.
That's why the level of abuse, sexual assault, violence is this high. Because growing up, you've always been told that, oh, you are stronger, you are like God's gift to humanity and mankind, and this relationship just works this way. And you've seen your mother service it, you forced your sisters to do it, and then you will have a wife and you will force her and she will service it as well. The idea of a good girl is so warped. But I'm not going to service what your ideal of a good Indian girl is, because I am a good Indian girl. Right? So you have to keep creating your own ecosystems and you will see change happen. Like today, if Uppi can get me a tampon, I'm sure, yeah, he's that comfortable with his daughter as well.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that's what we hope to do with these conversations. We hope that these open up people's minds and change some opinions. And you've been such a joy to talk to.
This was an orgasmic conversation. I feel a good release.
If you like this conversation, make sure you check out the last one with Nina Gupta because she drops bars. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of our new uploads. If you like this kind of content that goes deep, follow my charity on Instagram at Unicorn Island. See you next time.